Hello, good afternoon to my dear lecturer and my fellow friends. Today I'm going to present about hematopoiesis. Okay, first we see what is hematopoiesis. It is the process of formation of blood cells, which is red blood cells, the white blood cells and platelets is called as hematopoiesis, and the sites where it occurs are known as hematopoietic tissues and organs, which are bone marrow, liver and spleen. Cells responsible to do functions of hematopoiesis are first seen in yolk sac of embryo in third week of embryonic development, and these cells are known as hematopoietic stem cells. So what is the definition of stem cells? Cells capable of asymmetrically dividing. One group of cells is responsible for the production of well-differentiated products, and another group of cells is responsible to maintain the original population if stem cells and shows a character called as self-renewal. So what is stem cell? As you can see in the picture, a single cell that can replicate itself or differentiate into many cell types. So as you can see below here, it differentiates into many cell types. So next is hematopoietic stem cells. Hematopoietic stem cells also take origin in mesoderm of aorta, mesoderm of gonads, mesoderm of mesonephrons. Hematopoietic stem cells present in yolk sac migrate to other parts like liver, spleen, and bone marrow. The hematopoietic stem cell present in yolk sac at third week of embryo migrate to liver at around third month of fetal life. So around third month of embryo, the liver gets populated with the stem cell and become a major organ for hematopoiesis, which we call as dominant migration. Some hematopoietic stem cells also migrate to lymph nodes, spleen, which we call as minor migration. So liver, lymph nodes, and spleen continue as hematopoietic organs until birth. After birth, liver stops its hematopoietic activity because around fourth month of fetal life migration of stem cell from liver, lymph nodes, and spleen takes place to bone marrow. Some at time of fourth month of fetal life, hematopoiesis takes place in bone marrow. Bone marrow is permanent residence for hematopoietic stem cell. At time of birth, all hematopoietic stem cells are limited to bone marrow, and bone marrow will be active. Active bone marrow is called as red bone marrow, and inactive bone marrow is called as yellow bone marrow. Yellow bone marrow is accumulated with fat cells, so it is yellow in color, and red bone marrow is highly vascular and rich in hematopoietic stem cells. For newborn baby, all bone marrow are red, and as age increases, red bone marrow is active only in membranous bones. Up to puberty, most all bone marrow is red, and at age of puberty and after puberty, hematopoiesis stops in large bones and it's limited to axial skeleton, proximal ends off. In newborn, if hematopoiesis is going on outside of bone marrow, for example, in liver, spleen, and lymph nodes, it is called as exterior medullary hematopoiesis. If there is need of excessive hematopoietic activity, yellow bone marrow as a capacity is to be reactivated and converted into red bone marrow, which is seen in severe hemolysis. When there is excessive hematopoiesis, red bone marrow expands too much into outer bone table, oscal, and oscal, and in X-ray, outer bone table is not visible and only spicules are visible. And this condition is known as hair on end appearance. Bone marrow has reserve function, which means when in need, it can increase erythropoietic activity significantly. Process of hematopoiesis. It starts with first generation stem cells called as pluripotent stem cell, and the term pluripotent stem cell refer that they have a potency to convert into many different types of tissues. Pluripotent stem cells divides into two different types of multipotent stem cells. Multipotent stem cells are cells that have a capacity to self-renew by dividing and develop into multiple specialized cell types present in a specific tissue or organ. The two types of multipotent stem cells are cell related to lymphoid system are known as common lymphoid stem cells, and the cells related to myeloid system are known as common myeloid stem cells. Myeloid system refers to all blood cells other than lymphoid cells. We call it as lymphocytes, okay? So first we see common lymphoid stem cells, which is multipotent stem cells further divided into three types of committed lymphoid stem cells. First is pro-NK cells, which multiply and differentiate when enter into blood circulation, called as natural killer cells. These are not B or T lymphocytes. Next is pro-T cells, which multiply and differentiate, and premature cells, which are derivatives of pro-T cells, enter into peripheral circulation, and through circulation enters into thymus gland where maturity takes place, and after maturation come back to peripheral circulation as T lymphocytes. T lymphocytes are called as CD3 positive cells. T lymphocytes are divided into two types, which are CD3 and CD4 positive, are called as T helper cells, and are again divided into two types, which is Th1 and Th2. So the major function of Th1 is that they produce gamma interferons, TNF, which is tumor necrotic factor, and they act on monocytes, which in presence of Th1 converted into active macrophages, epithelioid cells, and giant cells. Major functions of Th2 is that they stimulate B cells to get converted into plasma cells by the cytokines IL-4 and IL-5 produced by it. IL-4 work as B cell growth factor, and IL-5 work as B cell differentiation factor, and this help B cell to convert into plasma cells which produce antibodies. Th1 help in cellular immunity, and Th2 help in humoral immunity. Cells which are CD3 and CD8 positive cells are called as T cytotoxic cells, which also take an active part in cellular immunity. Pro B cells, which get multiplied and differentiated into B cells, which get converted into plasma cell in action of Th2 cells to produce antibodies. Next is common myeloid stem cell. It is multipotent stem cell divided into few types of committed stem cells, which is a erythroid, megakaryoid, basophilic stem cell. It has a potential to go into morphologically recognizable precursor of three types: CFU, CFU erythroid system, which gets converted into erythroblast and passes through different stages to form reticuloblast, which later on produces mature RBCs, which is red blood cell. This is a morphologically recognizable precursor cell for erythropoiesis. Okay, next is CFU megakaryoid system. It gets converted into megakaryoblast, which passes on different stages and enter into blood circulation and platelets as platelets. Morphologically recognizable precursor cell for megakaryopoiesis. Next is CFU basophils systems. Gets converted into basoblast, which passes on different stages and enter peripheral circulation as basophils. On surfaces of basophils, there are surface receptors for IgE antibodies. Pluripotent cells are also responsible for production of mast cells and F receptors for IgE antibodies and play a major role in type 1 hypersensitivity. This is morphologically recognizable precursor cells for basophils. Next is B, the granulocyte monocyte system, stem cells. It is divided into two types of morphologically precursor cells, which is CFE for granulocyte. After a series of division, myoblast is formed and enter into peripheral circulation as neutrophils as granules of red and blue color. Next is CFU for monocyte. It converts into monoblast after series of division and enters into peripheral circulation as monocytes. Monocytes also have granules, but these are agranulocytes. Monocytes, when shifted to tissue when inflammation occurs, are called as inflammatory macrophages. Monocytes, when shifted into CNS, central nervous system, during early phase of development, are called as microglial cells. Monocytes, when shifted to liver, are called as Kupffer cells. Monocytes, when shifted to lung, are called as alveolar macrophages. When monocytes shifted to spleen and lymph nodes, are called as dendritic cells or histiocytes. Monocytes, when shifted to kidney, are called as mesangial cells. Monocytes under skin are called as Langerhans cells. Monocytes that are shifted to bone, osteocytes. So next is eosinophilioid stem cells. So it produces precursor cell called as eosinophilioblast and enter blood circulation to give a rise to eosinophils. Eosinophils have red granules. The condition in which the stem cells cannot multiply with enough speed to maintain red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets number in peripheral circulation is called as aplastic anemia. So blood cells number is reduced in blood. In patients suffering with aplastic anemia, bone marrow becomes hypocellular and in peripheral blood pancytopenia is seen. When stem cells are proliferating excessively, this condition is called as leukemias. So, peculiarities of bone marrow. Bone marrow provides unique environment for proliferation and differentiation of these stem cells and precursor cells. Bone marrow is rich in stromal cells which support hematopoietic processes. Stromal cells are capable of concentrating a lot of soluble factors, which is growth and differentiation factors like erythropoietin, thrombopoietin, stem cells colony stimulating factors such as IL-3. IL-3 are responsible for stem cell proliferation. Stromal cells have cells-to-cell interaction with hematopoietic cells and directs their differentiation. Soluble factors like erythropoietin, thrombopoietin, granulocyte, monocyte, colony stimulating factors, and granulocyte colony stimulating factors are synthesized by genetic recombination techniques and are used commercially. Bone marrows provide homing in tendency for stem cells. The bone marrow stromal cells have special surfaces adhesions molecules and the stem cells love those adhesion molecules. Under certain conditions are induced to produce hemangioblast cells, which on differentiates to give endothelial cells. Bone marrow stem cells can also produce non-hematopoietic stem cells like liver cells, biliary duct cells, myocardial cells, skeletal muscle cells, fully matured neurons, glial cells. Bone marrow is made of network of sinusoids which are lined by single layer of endothelial cells coated by basement membrane, but it is discontinuous. Hematopoiesis will be going on in the spaces between sinusoids and also called as interstitium of the bone marrow. Megakardioblasts have a finger-like processes which are extended through sinusoids, and when blood is flowing through sinusoid, these finger-like processes are broken, enter into circulation and are called as platelets. So erythroblasts present in cytoplasm differentiates and become progressively smaller in size As erythroblast differentiates, nucleus becomes smaller and disappears, and size decreases. So next is peculiarities of erythropoiesis. Erythroblast present in cytoplasm as large nucleus with blue cytoplasm and differentiates to become progressively small in size. As erythroblast differentiates, nucleus becomes smaller and it gets condensed and disappears, and the cell size decreases. Changes from pro-erythroblast to mature RBC. Size gradually decreases. First, cytoplasm is basophilic, but progressively basophilic nature disappears and eosinophilic nature appears. Nucleus disappears and condenses. So for nuclear maturation and condensation, there is requirement of vitamin B12 and folic acid. If there is severe deficiency of B12, vitamin B12 and folic acid, there is hemoglobin production, but there is no nuclear condensation. When there is a severe B12, vitamin B12 and folic acid deficiency, there is formation of megaloblast, which is larger size normaloblast, which are having eosinophilic cytoplasm and immature nucleus, and causes megaloblastic macrocytic anemia. And there is requirement of iron for hemoglobinization of cytoplasm. So for erythropoiesis, there is need of B12 vitamin and folic acid for nuclear maturation, and there is need of iron for hemoglobinization of cytoplasm, and there is also requirement of growth hormone and amino acids for normal cell metabolic activities. That's all from me. Thank you so much.